everybody. It's great to have you here. I am your host today. My name is Huma. I'm one of the managing partners here at FranklinCovey. And I feel really excited in conducting our first leadership conversations talk. And it's an experience, and we have seen that all over the world. What has happened is that Franklin Covey all over the world runs this amazing series by the name of On Leadership, and they call a lot of thought leaders like Jim Collins, Todd Davis, and they come and they share their great experience on leadership. They guide, they give some stories, and there's always something great to learn from there. Taking that inspiration, what FranklinCovey Pakistan thought was that we should also start something similar, something great which can help people. And specifically, in these challenging times, I think everybody, all of us, we need some advice, we need some great story, we need some inspiration. Keeping that in mind, we have started this new series. It's called Leadership Conversations. What we aim, what we want to do, we want to bring in great thought leaders from Pakistan who have the similar experiences, backgrounds, and get some ideas, some inspiration, some motivation from them for all of us, all the leaders out there to take some guidance from there. Is the CEO of Telenor Microfinance Bank, the Easy Pasa. He is a great leader who has more than 23 years of experience. He has been not just in experience in Pakistan, but also in US. He has been leading restructuring in banks. He's been doing digital banking. He specializes in fintech and in fintech partnerships and banks, and he has a great vision not only for Telenor Microfinance Bank, but also a great vision for Pakistan. He is looking forward to having a thriving digital economy in Pakistan. He is very, very inspiring. He's very motivating, and he himself is very, very motivated to achieve the goals he set for Telenor Microfinance. So let's give him a warm welcome, Mr. Mudassar Aqil. Great, thank you for joining us for this session today. We are really honored to have you here today. Before we start the session, मैं सिर्फ एक थोड़ा सा इसका आपको intro देना चाह रही हूँ, not just for you, just also for our audience who would be seeing us. This is an inspiration out of another leadership conversations that are happening. It's called On Leadership, and it is FranklinCovey US does that, and they call in a lot of thought leaders from US, and they give some great feedback, inspiring speeches, their stories for the corporate world, for the leaders out there. So we thought that now that we are in a very, very challenging times and everybody needs some sort of help or inspiration from other people. So we thought that FranklinCovey Pakistan should start something on the lines of talking to great leaders and also people who have great thought processes and pick their brains, get some sort of understanding from them, and also try to evolve a platform where we have a dialogue for everybody. And that's why we today, this is our first episode, and we have invited Mr. Mudassar Aqil, and thank you for being here. Mr. Mudassar doesn't need any, I think the corporate world knows him well, no introductions, but he has been a great leader, more than 23 years of experience. Right now, he is heading Telenor Microfinance Bank. So Mudassar has a track record of delivering great results year on year. We will be asking him in this interview, how does he do that? But having said that, his experience he has a vast experience restructuring banks, microfinance banking, and also right now fintech partnerships. And he has a great vision for Telenor Microfinance Bank. Not only for the bank, he has a vision. He has a vision for the country, and he looks forward to having a thriving digital economy in this country. And he's very passionate about this. We're going to be asking him about these passions also. But just let's welcome him on board. Thank you so much for joining us today. Would you like to say something, and we can then...
Thank you, Huma. Pleasure to be here. First of all, I'd like to start off by saying that I don't qualify to be called a great leader, but nonetheless, we are all going on our journey, so I'm happy to share my journey so far and my thought process, but far away from being called a great leader.
Thank you. So that's also a quality of a great leader. They never call themselves great. So the tick is right there for you. So we're going to start this off. Our conversation or our this program is designed in a way that we have 3 sections or 3 rounds to it. Our first round is about your leadership story, because we are all interested in great stories or interesting stories. Our second round is like a hard talk. We're going to ask you some very difficult questions. And our third round is more of like a rapid fire type of a round, and we just quick answers, and you don't have time to think on that one. And then the last is not a round, but just your ending remarks on certain important issues. So this is how we're going to take our conversation forward from here. So let's start off. Your leadership story. If you can give us your leadership story in a nutshell, and since we are talking about adversity, and right now we are all facing some very adverse external situations. So what do you believe in adversity? Is it can you get a break in adversity as a leader? What would you say on that?
Oh, I think it's a very pertinent question, considering the times that we are going through as a world overall. And I don't think any industry, any country is spared from facing adverse situation because of COVID-19 and otherwise the way the world is changing. So the one thing that I've learned is that the difference between adversity and temporary setbacks, the setbacks are usually like a one-off event, and you can recover from it by just dealing with that one event, and then you can get back on your feet. But adversity can be much longer term, and sometimes, a lot of time, you don't really have anything that you can look at on the horizon and say, okay, this is what the solution is going to look like. So there's a lot of uncertainty in adverse circumstances. So, and I think it does test the measure of a leader in a big way. And it does, I agree with you with the question that it can make or break a leader, because if the character of the leader is weak, and this is where the character really gets tested, and then character is also grounded in your values, your behaviors, it also tests, are you in it for the short term? Are you in it for the long term? Are there any principles at play? So all of this sort of comes together in an adverse time for a leader. So, and if there is a weakness in the character, if you don't have the perseverance, if you don't have a long-term view, then it will break you. And I think, and this is exactly, I think, what we are dealing with as a world. And you can clearly see, you can look at the world leaders without naming them. There are many countries where the political leadership is under immense pressure, and you see how those leaders are crumbling under pressure. And then you see some of the other ones who are thriving, who are able to rally their people around, give them hope, give them direction, give them courage. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. You're very right on saying that it's the character that matters. So you've been in so many leadership positions, and I'm sure there are ups and downs, and you face some great times as a leader, and then there are some adverse circumstances. So if you can tell us your story of an adverse situation and how you dealt with it, and what were those values or those characteristics that you're talking about, the character part that help you come out of those situations.
I just keep things simple. I have a very sort of a linear way of thinking, and it all starts from, first of all, you have to have sort of congruence, right? So if what's inside is not aligned with what's outside, you will always be in conflict. And if you're always in conflict, you can't really be at peace. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're not at peace, a stressful situation, an adverse situation will really break you, because you're not really aligned within yourself, and you're always dealing with this conflict. So the first thing that you really, in my view, I always looked at, that I have to have faith in what I'm doing, right? So, and you have to believe in the purpose of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Once you have that, then the second thing you can't have is fear. If you
Mm-hmm.
if you're reacting to situation from a place of fear,
Mm-hmm.
then again that would also break you, because then you're always thinking about what can go wrong, and in an adverse situation there are a million things that can go wrong, and you don't really have answer to it. So once you address these things, then that's where the what I was alluding to earlier, the importance of character comes into play. If these things are in place, then essentially it's really just putting one foot in front of the other. There's not really anything else beyond that. So it's great to have a grand vision or a dream of where you want to be, but you have
Mm-hmm.
to think big, but you have to act small. So it's like every single day you have to do what needs to be done. You have to strengthen the foundation of what you're trying to do. You have to build on every single day the work that you have done. The next day you have to do more on top of it. And in my experience and in my thought process, this is sort of how I've always looked at things. I haven't really tried to look at big challenges with a grand vision and then just you know very ambitious strategies. I'm very much focused on execution also, um,
Yeah.
and
So
just
it's a
doing what needs to be
difference
done.
between.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you actually talking about the integrity and execution and the um, daily run to that execution, which needs to be going on. So if you can give us an example from one of the places where you have been a leader, if you can give us and relate this to one of your positions and how you did that.
Yeah, I mean, so the example that I want to give you, let me frame this. So the first thing to understand is that as a leader, you have to understand that there are times when you have to become a micromanager, and at times you have to become a strategic thinker. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of time people are under this illusion that they read all of these business, management books, etc., and they think that leaders are only big strategy thinkers,
Mm-hmm.
and they give this grand vision, and then people go and do all the work. But that's not actually how it works in the real world. Because a lot of time when you're trying to do things, you don't really know what's going to work. So you have to try a lot of different things before you figure out what's the way forward. And a lot of time you're dealing in situations where people around you don't have the experience or faith in what they're doing. So they really need to sort of see the evidence, see the validation, and see an example of how this will work and how they will be successful before they will follow. So you have to sort of do this, a combination of things. Your management practice needs to be in such a way that a lot of time you will, before you do big things, you do very small things, which for a for a substantial period of time looks like a waste of your time many times, right? So, for instance, um, at my one of my previous employers, we were dealing with a bank which was close to a potential shutdown because of
Mm-hmm.
the multitude of problems it was facing. And then one of the key problems to resolve was that the business model was not really working. So the bank didn't really have a sustainable revenue model, and that needed to be fixed. And in order to fix that, you had to work at such a small level. Sometimes you had to get down to uh, within a city at a couple of branch level and dealing with the sales force over there directly by sitting down with them and figuring out what the issues were.
Mhm.
Now, traditionally speaking, it would be very frustrating for any CEO to for having to operate at such a micro level.
Yeah. Mhm.
But until we did that, there was
Mhm.
no way we could actually scale anything beyond that. So there was a grind that lasted a few years, and once
Mhm.
we were able to get through it, then we developed a team which was so much more stronger that
Mhm.
actually hardly needed any guidance from me, and then took us forward. So that's one example that I'd like to share.
That's a great example, and it actually really shows that it's not the position but the mindset that's more important. And coming down from and to be able to relate to all the levels, not just to be able to relate to the top leadership, but to be able to come down and relate to the frontline people also. I mean, thank you for relating this story. So it seems you have been a great learner also, besides being a great leader. So what do you think? What roles do the leader need to learn continuously? What makes up of this continuous learning experience? Any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I think if you don't have an innate sense of curiosity that
Mm-hmm.
you bring to the job every single day, you cannot succeed as a leader. More so today than I guess any other time in the human history,
Mm-hmm.
where the every 2 years we are actually doubling the amount of information that we have had in the entire human race. I mean, that's the
Mm-hmm.
amount of new knowledge which is being
Exactly.
accumulated. So the things that you learn become stale so quickly that you have to constantly be curious about learning new things and what's happening. And learning happens 360 degrees. You're not really learning from people who are above you. You're learning from your peers. You're learning from people who report to you also. You're learning from the outside as well. And you do this by asking a lot of questions. You just, and you stay engaged with whatever industry that you're in. There has to be a process through which value is generated in your work. You stay as close to that process, I believe, as a leader. You have to be engaged and connected to that process, and all the time learning how it can be improved. Every single day you think about how we can improve, what can we do better today, and that thinking should never leave a
Never
leader,
mind.
in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a relentless pursued. Very true, very true. So it's a great story, and we get a lot of learning from you. And we move on to our next section, which is more, I would say, it's like a more daring section, and it's the hard talk part. We will be asking you some difficult questions. So the first question is the three major mistakes that leaders make. And please also, while you're thinking on those three mistakes, think of a mistake that you did also.
Well, I think a big mistake that leaders make is that they think that they can actually get things done through the power that they have in their title. That's the most
Oh,
common mistake that
very
I
true.
see all the
Yeah,
time, right?
yeah.
So, which
Mm-hmm.
which I know uh, in the FC Franklin Covey
Terminology.
terminology is formal authority versus moral authority, right? So if you try
Yeah,
to lead with formal authority, I think that's a classic mistake that I see all the time, where
yeah.
leaders think that they can tell people what to do, or
Mm-hmm.
just shut them up, or just
Mm-hmm.
command respect. It just doesn't happen that way. And then
Mm-hmm.
beyond that, it's just petty things, such as blaming others for failures,
Mm-hmm.
complaining, becoming cynical. Those are the classic mistakes that I see a lot of leaders making all the time. And then talking about negativity, it's just you know discussing all of those reasons why something happened, why something went wrong, and why it cannot happen in the future, is you just fanning by speaking about negativity and blame game. You're really fanning even all of these things even more. So, as a leader, you have to. The good comes with the bad. So you have to take ownership. And a lot of time, if things are not going well under you, the hard reality is that you're responsible for it at some level. When you boil it all down,
The buck
the
stops
buck
at you.
the buck actually stops with you.
Yeah.
You really have to look in the mirror and say, okay, I'm responsible for it. So those are the classic mistakes that I see. In terms of when I think about it, the big mistake that I have made, and I've made it more than once, is that I have not gotten rid of some of the people that I should have gotten rid of much earlier.
The time,
Uh,
it's basically the right time that matters a lot in positions of leadership.
it's like
Taking decisions at the right time.
when you form your opinion based on data, based on evidence, based on you see what's happening, then after that, if you're really counting on people to change or transform themselves, and if they're not exhibiting any behavior of that self-awareness, then you really need to cut your losses as quickly as possible. And any time that you continue to invest in it beyond that point is really futile. And that's a trap that I've been stuck in many times. And you can call it probably as I know that Seven Habits call it weakness of integrity. That you don't have the integrity sometimes to take tough decisions more quickly.
More than integrity probably is that you're more considerate.
That's a weakness.
For the people. Yeah. So we would put it nicely. The consideration bit is high, and you need to be more balanced in that.
But the funny thing is that finally, when I made that decision, it turned out in almost in every single instance that it was a short-term pain. But as you obviously you do it with respect and you do it with in a respectful, positive way. When you keep in touch with those people and you find out, down the road they're happier for it and you're happier for it also, because it was something that was not working out for them either. But temporarily it looked like a negative thing for them, and you try to avoid it.
Yeah, that's a great lesson actually, and a lot of us do have this weakness. Thank you for pointing this out. We all have biases also. As people, we have biases. As leaders, we have biases. So what are those common biases that you have observed which actually restrict certain leaders, and you need to avoid those biases? What would those be?
Yeah, a very common bias that I see is that choosing presentation over substance. So a lot of time, many leaders are swayed by or impressed by, people who are very good at presenting things, but they don't really have any substance in delivering those things on the ground. So you really, as a leader, should have the clarity and authenticity in you to actually look beyond that beyond the eloquence, and really look at the substance of the proposal which is in front of you and the person who's presenting.
Yeah, so you have to actually to be able to look at the two sides of the coin and not just be looking at the one side. And I think that does require a lot of practice to be able to train your mind to do that.
And I'll give you some examples in Pakistani context, because most of our audience is from Pakistan. That we all know that we have a dichotomy when it comes to our education system. So we have a lot of people who go through the government education system, and a lot of people have the privilege of going through the private education system. So the opportunities that come their way, people who go through the private education system, a lot of people have opportunities to go abroad to study. So they're more worldly in their point of view. Their expression is better, especially expression in English is better, which is an important qualifier in Pakistan for your career progression. And then we have a lot of people who are actually really street smart. I mean, these are the people who have fought the system, they have risen from a very large number of people in very adverse circumstances, but they a lot of times struggle to uh, clearly express their thoughts. And if you give them just a little bit of attention and a little bit of exposure and training, they actually come up the curve very quickly also.
Learning
So
curve.
what you really need to is look beyond that and see the ability of who is able to deliver rather than who is able to present things more eloquently. And I've repeatedly seen that, and I've seen people who have gone to Ivy League schools and are very well educated and have brilliant resumes, but don't really have that work ethic or that drive in them, or even are not even connected to the market or to understand the ground reality, rather than people who haven't had these kind of opportunities, but really are brilliant in adverse circumstances to deliver.
But how do you pick them? What do you do?
I think different things work for different people. So for instance, one of the things that I focus on is I very quickly make the conversations or exchange of that you're having as informal as possible, right? And you get to you make them comfortable and you communicate with them in the language of their choice, right? So it doesn't have to be जिसको अंग्रेजी नहीं आती उससे उर्दू में बात करें, अगर जिसको उर्दू नहीं आती आप उसकी जुबान में बात करें. You make them really comfortable and you establish that I am here to learn from you. You are actually superior in this exchange than me, because I want to learn from you. You're the teacher, and your knowledge is better than me. I may have a higher title, but it's so once people get comfortable, then you can really look behind the facade and see that what's the real substance. And then similarly, people who have great eloquence, you can test them by giving them some real life challenges or assignments to really see
their real value.
their true metal also. Yeah. So that's what I like to do also quite often.
So you touched upon a very important thing. You were talking about people who have great presentations, and you were then talking about people who have great competence also. That brings me to this another concept, another very important issue that happens with a lot of us in the corporate world or otherwise also. There are certain people in your team leader. As a team leader, you have certain people who you are dealing with, and there's and the dilemma is between character and competence. And you have very, very competent people who deliver, who are your best runner, they are your ace performers, but there is an issue or two with their character or work ethic. So usually leaders overlook certain things because the person is performing and he's bringing in the revenue. But there's a dilemma there, because this maybe sometimes or most of the time you face some character issues with them or work ethic. So what is your belief and what is your practice? Many times leaders overlook character bit because the performance is coming in. As a leader, what is your belief and practice?
I'm very, very clear on that. If you compromise on your values, you will lose in the long run. I would say you would lose even in the medium run, let alone the long run. So the value-less performance or value compromising numbers are very, very short-lived. This is a temporary thing. So every time I've run into this, I have resolved the matter very, very quickly.
Yeah. So that's a tough decision, actually. Many times people are not ready to take those tough decisions. So I'm glad to hear that you have a very strong view on these issues.
Uma, I've yet to come across any person who was indispensable in my life, and that very much includes myself. So, I mean, this is a temporary problem. If you find someone who is uh, not aligned with the values of the organization,
Mm-hmm.
it's so yeah. I mean, it might hurt you probably for 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, but thinking that somebody leaving the organization can decimate the entire company, then you have a bigger problem than just that individual. So I think this is our personal limitation of our mind, thinking that oh, this one individual is so important. So these are the things that if you want to, the first thing is that you never look, regardless of what business you're in, you have to think long term. You must not think short term. You can't be thinking in terms of quarters and annual numbers only. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever you are building something for long term, you can't have leaders in that organization who are not aligned with the values of the organization, because but then what you're building is they will weaken the foundation. So they just don't fit into the plan.
That's true. So this brings me to another topic which is
So what
difficult
you
a lot
really
of
need to do
times.
is to ease them out.
Sorry, I was missing. There was something left in your conversation. Do you want to complete it because आपका शायद वो खत्म हो गया था.
No, no, I'm switching between two different Wi-Fi's. मेरे ख्याल ये
All right. So my
कभी इसका
next
connection
question
weak हो रहा है. Yeah.
is linked to this is workplace harassment. There's a lot of talk about workplace harassment. We see educational institutes also coming up, but this workplace harassment has been in the corporate world. It has always been there. And so, what is your take on it? How do you deal with it? Are there very clear lines, or is it something that happens and people ignore it? What is something, a system that you have for that?
This is a hot button issue for me. In my At the previous organizations that I've worked at every single place I've taken a very clear and decisive view on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that it had a massive impact on the organization in terms of addressing it very clearly, addressing it
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of candor, with a lot of clarity to all of the people in the organization, that how do we conduct our behavior within the organization, particularly towards women. So
Okay.
the harassment against women, unfortunately, is a very common phenomenon in Pakistan. Happens everywhere, happens in disguise of so many different ways, happens at every level,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. So,
Exactly.
so what I've done in the past also, that I've actually engaged in very open conversations in employee town halls, addressing the do's and don'ts, because a lot of time, especially in the Pakistani context, people misconstrue harassment with sexual harassment only, right? And
Yes.
then and their definition of sexual harassment is also extreme scenarios where they say, oh, nothing like that happened, so there is
So
no
this is
harassment going on. So I had to have very clear conversations with people at every level, saying कि ये आप अगर ये भी डिस्कस कर रहे हैं कि आपकी कॉलीग जो है वो कौन से कपड़े पहन के आती है काम पे, या कौन उसको लेने के लिए आता है, कौन उसको छोड़ने के लिए जाता है, और etc. These are all various forms of harassment, right? So
बिल्कुल.
this was, so a lot of time this was an eye opener to people in the organization, because of people never thought that this is actually harassment. Similarly, the work habits of our male colleagues. I talked about that how, again, in the Pakistani context, the males are using their office space as an extension of sometimes their social networks also. So a lot of time, their friends or and sometimes even family member is not unaccustomed in Pakistan to come and visit them for
Mm-hmm.
like a few minutes, for half an hour, to make a call, and they would entertain it and engage with them, uh, and that spills into the work hours. As a result, they're not really feeling compelled to go home on a timely manner because they're not really primary caregivers at home. So they're not really tending to their children or to their parents, etc. So it's a bit of a male chauvinistic kind of a society at many levels. Pakistan is. It's a hard truth. So women are then negatively penalized when they want to come to work on time and they are in a rush to get back home on time because they have responsibilities at home also. So then that becomes a barrier for their professional growth. So we, at my previous employer also, and here as well, I'm very, very clear on that this is not going to be tolerated. These things are clearly understood and discussed at our organization, and our policy frameworks also support women and allow them the flexibility that they need. And now we're all learning that how much more flexible that we can be, and these were all self-imposed restrictions that we had on ourselves.
So are you saying that now that everybody is working from home, women are more productive?
I think women generally have been more productive than men in my experience because they're more focused. But I think now there is more opportunity for women.
So now you've been gender biased.
I'm sharing my experience.
Okay.
but
you have seen that. All right. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I've seen it all the time. So I mean, if you collect data also, like you are in the research business as well, you will see that it holds true.
That's an interesting area to actually collect some data and remove a lot of our own biases. Specifically in our context, in the Pakistani context, there's a lot of bias, youth bias in the other way, but there's a bias for women, and people are not usually very keen on hiring women specifically at leadership positions because of the very reasons that you had highlighted. So I'm glad that you have this vision and you have this understanding of how to get more out of women, and considering that is not a barrier for hiring women. So I believe that at Telenor Microfinance you will have a great gender parity numbers also.
They're not as great as I would like them to be, but now we are going to work on improving this. I've only joined the organization less than a year ago, so but this is from the very first month very much on my radar. But I'm very pleased to see that we have very strong women leaders and mid-managerial level positions also, and especially on the technology side of the business. I see quite a few women which are present at our company, but I think there's a lot more that we can do, and we plan on working on that.
Excellent. Thank you. So it brings me to my next section, which is like only one-liner answers I want from you. That's a rapid fire round. So just name any two leaders you get great inspiration from.
Well, Nelson Mandela is one name that comes to mind. And then another leader that I admire in the business world is Reed Hastings, is the CEO of Netflix.
Okay. All right. So my next question is one quality that is a must for a team player.
For a team?
Player, for a good team player. One quality you think
you have to be a net giver. You have to be a net giver. So if you ask me one quality, you have to be a net giver. So give more. So net you give more than you take from others.
And one behavior you consider is unforgivable. There are many things you can forgive, but one thing which is unforgivable as a leader.
As a part of a team, or as a leader, you say?
As a leader.
I think it's if you think that you are the center of the universe, I think that's that's the cardinal sin. It's not about you.
Yeah, as a leader, very, very true. So if I would say your happiest moment as a professional, what would that be?
the happiest moment that I've had in my career are when I have seen people under me growing, developing, and doing amazing things, much bigger things that they ever thought would be possible, much bigger things than even I thought would be possible. Those are the most satisfying moments.
Okay, great. Thank you for a great rapid round. My question to you is, it's a tricky question. So if you get an opportunity to lead any Pakistani company besides the bank, or any national company or a national organization, what would that be?
Since we're talking about a wish list, so the kind of company that I would like to lead, I don't think it exists at the moment. I'd like to create it. So if I have to,
Yeah.
if I have to leave this company and go out, and I'd like to create an organization that would have the ambition to create some much larger impact in a country like Pakistan that has a very large number of youth, which is has high aspirations, which is unemployed. So, a company that can allow people to contribute to the economy and to the society overall, and really empower them, and has an amazing culture, which is really not hierarchical, where people can come and create tremendous amount of value for others, would be the kind of company. I don't think it exists at the moment.
That
I'll have to create it.
definitely doesn't exist right now. But it's really heartening to hear that you have this great vision. And with this vision, if I would ask you as your parting comment for the youth, for the young leaders, young people of Pakistan, a lot of people feel that because of COVID, things cannot happen. Your message for them, for these young people for whom you are envisioning this great organization, any message that you would like to give to them, and from your experience?
One thing that I must acknowledge up front, that people who are teenagers right now, or finishing their college education, or in school at the moment, are really in a unique place in the history of humankind, because this is the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution, which is a defining moment in the human history. So there is probably not a lot that can be learned by looking backwards. So there's a lot more that is unexplored, which is not even invented yet. That's the world that they're entering into. So they'll be probably working on jobs that don't exist today. They'll be developing those skill sets which are not being taught in the school today. So what's really important is that we train young people to how to open up their minds, and how to be unafraid, and how to accept change. And I think these are the key traits that we really need to teach our youth. Because if we think that by giving them a great degree in today's world would really help them in tomorrow's world, I don't think that would be necessarily true. I think it would be people who have the right mindset and have the right attitude are the ones who will go on and succeed. So I think, so what's really important is, in my view, for our youth, is to understand that they have to have an insatiable curiosity, number one. Secondly, they need to understand that in the world that they will be working in and growing older in, anything which is repetitive in nature will be automated, right? So there won't be those kind of jobs where we think that you can sit and mindlessly do a repetitive work and then go home at 5 o'clock. You will have to become active contributors in adding value to whatever work you do.
Take
You
initiative.
really have to.
Yeah. Use resourcefulness. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
very,
you have to add a critical value to the work that you're doing. Nobody is going to be giving you money and a title to become a manager. There will be no longer those kind of managers anymore. So analytical thinking, understanding data, looking at complex things and making sense out of them is very important, right? So now and which is called critical thinking, and which is not taught very well, unfortunately, in our schools and colleges today. So what really is required now is that, number one, in a bad job market, in a tough situation like today, young people should look for opportunities where they can contribute and learn, and not necessarily worry too much about, in the short run, about what they're getting in return. Because what they really need to do is to go and learn in a real life situation, in a real organization which is trying to solve a problem in today's world. So they become a part of it and say, okay, how can I learn more, and how can I add value to this organization? So I focus on giving more. A lot of time I see young people in a trap where they go to if they're lucky to find a job, they think that it is now the responsibility of the employer to take care of their career, but it's not. It's really you on your own. So the world that we are entering into will not be the kind of world where you will start a job and then you will have a 20-year, a 30-year career probably with the same company. So there will be a lot of people who will be doing flexible things for multiple companies at the same time, that we call the gig economy. So you have to develop, a new kind of toolkit and a new kind of skill set. And I don't know what that looks like, because a lot of it has not even developed yet. So, but it's really the right mindset and your worldview, which is very important, and dealing with uncertainty. There will be people who have this flexibility and a deep reservoir of knowledge and ability to continue learning are the ones who will prosper, in my view. So.
Thank you. That's actually a huge paradigm shift, not vis-a-vis youth and for themselves, but a huge paradigm shift that needs to occur at the level of universities and institutes and even organizations who are training and churning out these youth. So it's a responsibility not only lies on the shoulders of the youth, but also people who are training them, or institutes that are bringing in new curriculum to deal with what is out there in future for them. With that, we come to an end of our session today, of our conversation today. Thank you so much. It was really inspiring listening to you, learning from you, and thanks a lot on the behalf of FranklinCovey also for sharing your profound thoughts with us. Hopefully, we will invite you again some other time and talk to you again also.
Thank you, Omar. It was a real pleasure. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.